We're in the middle of a vast ecological emergency.
We're looking at starvation.
I mean, think about that. Wildfires in the Arctic.
It's not going to be too long until it comes for everybody.
You can't sort this one out by being the world's best recycler or taking shorter showers.
I'm afraid the sort of traditional methods of campaigning that we've been using haven't kind of delivered that sense of urgency yet.
So what Extinction Rebellion is doing is creating disruption in society so that people start attending to the issue.
It is a peaceful, non-violent movement for civil disobedience.
The best thing I could do was to be out there demanding radical change.
Extinction Rebellion's entire focus is about reweaving the 100%, the whole human family.
This is not even about future generations anymore. This is about us and whether we get to have a future. We need everyone's hands on deck and bodies on the line in order to stop these catastrophic possibilities from coming to fruition.
Climate change is happening faster than even scientists had thought possible. Scorching heat waves, ferocious storms, torrential downpours.
This is the issue of our time.
There will be climate refugees even here in Britain.
Nothing like this has ever happened before. We're evidently chapter 1.
Today, Mr. Speaker, this House must declare an environment and climate emergency. We have no time to waste. We are living in a climate crisis that will spiral dangerously out of control unless we take rapid and dramatic action now. This is no longer about a distant future. We're talking about nothing less than the irreversible destruction of the environment within our lifetimes of members of this House. Young people know this. They have the most to lose. I was, like many members of this House on all sides, deeply moved a few weeks ago to see the streets outside this Parliament filled with colour and noise by children chanting, "Our planet, our future." For someone of my generation, it was inspiring, but also humbling that children felt they had to leave school to teach us, adults, a lesson. The truth is, they are ahead of the politicians on this, the most important issue of our time. We are witnessing an unprecedented upsurge of climate activism, with groups like Extinction Rebellion forcing the politicians in this building to listen. For all the dismissive and defensive column inches the protesters have provoked, they are a massive and, I believe, very necessary wake-up call. Today, we have the opportunity to say, we hear you.
Today I'm appealing for leadership from politicians, from business and scientists, and from the public everywhere. We have the tools to make our actions effective. What we still lack, even after the Paris Agreement, is the leadership and the ambition to do what is needed. And what makes all of this even more disturbing is that we were warned. Scientists have been telling us for decades, over and over again. And far too many leaders have refused to listen. And far too few have acted with the vision the science demands. And we see the results. In some situations, they are approaching scientists' worst-case scenarios. The world's richest nations are the most responsible for the climate crisis, yet the effects are being felt first and worst by the poorest nations and the most vulnerable peoples and communities.
Well, we start with the heat wave that continues to batter India. Extreme temperatures across the north and the east of the country have caused hundreds of deaths. In the south, the searing hot spell has led to severe water shortages. The situation has reached a crisis point in Chennai. This is India's sixth biggest city.
There was a freak hailstorm in Mexico. It dropped about 5 feet of ice pellets yesterday north of Mexico City. Look at these images.
This. 5 feet.
5 feet. Cars were absolutely buried. Nearly 200 homes and businesses reported damage from the hail. There were no casualties.
That's amazing. And the whole thing is amazing.
It really is.
42 million Americans are in the path of severe storms tonight. And this evening, the National Weather Service says this one in Indiana was a tornado with wind speeds of up to 125 miles an hour, an EF2.
You can see that this building's roof completely ripped off.
The Growing Kids Learning Center in South Bend took a big hit. Fortunately, no children were inside.
Right now, though, we want to go from earthquakes to extreme heat as temperatures are expected to climb into the 80s in Alaska today. That's actually a slight dip from the record-breaking 90 degrees that made lakes and ponds a go-to destination and broke records in Anchorage and 2 other cities on the 4th of July.
Millions of people here in Europe have been sweltering in this summer's second extreme heat wave, and across the continent, records are being broken. A wall of hot Saharan air trapped over northwestern Europe is the cause of these record highs. Let's take a closer look now. Germany is at 42.6 degrees Celsius. The temperature's continuing to rise. The Netherlands, 40.4. Belgium, 40.6. And if you look at France, they're at 42.6 degrees. Now that represents a shattering of the old record by more than 2 degrees. In a moment, we'll be talking to a climate scientist who says this could be the new normal.
Tonight in the Bahamas, a life-threatening storm surge sweeping across the island nations.
This is very deep water.
The storm came ashore on the Abaco Islands on Sunday. With Category 5 hurricane force winds gusting above 225 miles per hour, cars and entire homes submerged.
You know, they were talking about climate change yesterday, and now we're learning that scientists and researchers are looking at how to change the weather on purpose. That's right. Lasers now could one day manipulate rain and lightning. CBS This Morning contributor Michio Kaku is a physics professor at City College of New York. Professor, nice to see you. Extraordinary seeing Al Gore and Bill Clinton there together with Charlie, wasn't it?
That's right, yeah.
Yeah, they did not get into this discussion, though. But it is fascinating. I mean, lasers, really, to change the weather?
That's right. Well, as Mark Twain once famously said, everyone complains about the weather, but no one ever does anything about it. Well, instead of doing a rain dance, we physicists are firing trillion-watt lasers into the sky to actually precipitate rain clouds and actually bring down lightning bolts. This is potentially a game changer.
But this is experimental.
It's experimental. However, in the laboratory so far it works. When you have water vapor and you have dust particles or ice crystals, you can precipitate rain. It condenses around the seeds. These seeds can also be created by laser beams. By firing trillion-watt lasers, you rip apart the electrons, creating what are called ions, and these ions act like seeds, like dust particles, bringing down rain and even lightning.
Go ahead.
Well, this fascinates me in part because, too, I remember reading the stories that China had used this during the Olympics, that the USSR had used this after Chernobyl to create rain clouds. I mean, did those really work then? We have some of these capabilities now?
Inconclusive. Even in the 60s, the CIA used this to bring down monsoons during the Vietnam War, to wash out the Viet Cong. Governments have been playing with this thing.
Alleged to.
Alleged to, right.
Yeah.
Now, we realize that for decades now, these governments have been alleged to have experimented with weather control, but nothing conclusive. This time we're bringing in the laws of physics rather than simply waving our hands and uttering mumbo-jumbo. We're actually using trillion-watt lasers now. And in the laboratory, sure enough, they precipitate rain out of water vapor. Sure enough, you can actually bring down electricity down the beam.
So what does it mean for drought areas that need to have rain for crops, and if they don't have them, there's the consequences of famine?
Well, the bad news is if it's a clear blue sky, it's not going to do anything at all because it only takes water vapor that's already in the air and condenses it. However, for floods, for agriculture, farmers, for people planning wedding parties, football games, you name it, outdoor events and agriculture and flooding and even hurricanes. All of them could be subject to weather modification.
Incredibly interesting, Professor Michio Kaku. Thank you so much.
Craig Funky is flying me to the edge of a violent thunderstorm.
You see how nice and crisp the top of that cloud is up there?
Yeah. But the former commercial pilot isn't some adrenaline junkie courting danger. He's a cloud seeder, chasing this menacing storm to squeeze out extra rain for the drought-stricken farmland below.
As a pilot going through school, you're taught to avoid thunderstorms.
This is Craig's job, firing chemicals into the clouds in a controversial attempt to modify the weather. He's literally a rainmaker.
That dark, thick cloud over there has lots of moisture in it.
That's part of the cloud that was seeded. It actually looks heavy with rain.
Cloud seeding has been used around the world for decades.
It looks like he's painting the sky.
The flares are shooting millions of silver iodide and calcium chloride particles into the cloud, where they collide with drops of water and ice and produce even more moisture. Then, usually within 20 minutes...
So what is this white smoky stuff over here?
That's rain.
Oh, that's rain?
Yeah, that's rain. All this is rain out here.
Don't worry if you can't hear what I'm saying. I couldn't even hear myself. This is the loudest sound you could possibly conceive. And, as it turns out, the cleanest.
Now, the most amazing thing is that cloud up there, which was generated by the engine, is just a mixture of hydrogen and oxygen. It's water vapor. And in about an hour's time, someone in Mississippi is going to get wet washing. It will actually rain. I told you! It's raining! That's unbelievable! Oh. NASA's playing God. It's making its own weather.
Now let's look at what the Bible and Spirit of Prophecy has to say about these things. And I will punish the world for their evil, and the wicked for their iniquity. And I will cause the arrogancy of the proud to cease, and will lay low the haughtiness of the terrible. Therefore I will shake the heavens, and the earth shall remove out of her place, in the wrath of the Lord of hosts, and in the day of his fierce anger. And there shall be signs in the sun and in the moon, and in the stars, and upon the earth distress of nations, with perplexity, the sea and the waves roaring. Men's hearts failing them for fear, and for looking after those things which are coming on the earth, for the powers of heaven shall be shaken. For nation shall rise against nation, and kingdom against kingdom, and there shall be famines and pestilences and earthquakes in divers places. But he that shall endure unto the end, the same shall be saved. The Lord is teaching men that there are limits to his forbearance, in fires, in floods, in earthquakes, in the fury of the great deep, in calamities by sea and by land. The warning is given that God's Spirit will not always strive with men. The enemy has worked, and he is working still. He is come down in great power, and the Spirit of God is being withdrawn from the earth. And these very things will increase until the close of this earth's history. The religious world too is to be terribly shaken, for the end of all things is at hand. Before the Son of Man appears in the clouds of heaven, everything in nature will be convulsed. Satan works through the elements also to garner his harvest of unprepared souls. He has studied the secrets of the laboratories of nature, and he uses all his power to control the elements as far as God allows. Even now he is at work, in accidents, in calamities by sea and by land, in great conflagrations, in fierce tornadoes and in terrific hailstorms, in tempests, floods, cyclones, tidal waves and earthquakes. In every place and in 1,000 forms is Satan exercising his power. He sweeps away the ripening harvest, and famine and distress follow. He imparts to the air a deadly taint, and thousands perish by the pestilence. These visitations are to become more and more frequent and disastrous. Destruction will be upon the inhabitants of the world. The beasts of the field will groan, and the earth will languish. And then the great deceiver will persuade men that those who serve God are causing these evils. It will be declared that the nation is offending God by the violation of the Sunday Sabbath, that this sin has brought calamities which will not cease until Sunday observance shall be strictly enforced, and that those who present the claims of the fourth commandment, thus destroying reverence for Sunday, are the troublers of the nation, preventing its restoration to divine favor and temporal prosperity. Satan puts his interpretation upon events, and they think, as he would have them, that the calamities which fill the land are a result of Sunday breaking. Thinking to appease the wrath of God, these influential men make laws enforcing Sunday observance. They think that by exalting this false rest day higher and still higher, compelling obedience to the Sunday law, the spurious Sabbath, they are doing God's service. Those who honor the Bible Sabbath will be denounced as enemies of law and order, as breaking down the moral restraints of society, causing anarchy and corruption, and calling down the judgments of God upon the earth. From what we have just read, is there anything that we, as humans, can do to stop these things? The answer is no. God has told us beforehand that these things were going to happen. Can we now go on and live the way we want and not care about the environment? No. But our focus must shift from the worldly view of all these things to what God tells us. We have to know that the dragon, or Satan, is behind everything, and that he is causing his agents, namely the beast Antichrist system with its leader the Pope, the image of the beast America, and apostate Protestant churches, to carry out his plans. We must persevere and focus on Jesus. We must not panic blindly and uninformed along with the world. So now let's have a look at what the Pope has to say about all these climate calamities.
Alla delegazione del Movimento Cattolico Mondiale per il Clima, e li ringrazio per l'impegno a curare la nostra casa comune in questi tempi di grave crisi socio-ambientale. Incoraggio a continuare a tessere le reti affinché le chiese locali rispondano con determinazione al grido della terra e al grido dei poveri.